Well, let me introduce Tony Anscombe once more, and we will be learning a lot from him, as he has a lot of experience with identity fraud. And so take it away, Tony. We're happy to have you here.
Yes, and sorry about that for being disconnected. It shows that it happens to even the best of us. So this is me. Here's my email address. If you do have a question after this presentation you don't want to ask in a public forum, please send me an email. I will endeavor to come back and answer it. Slide, please. So cybercrime is an issue. I mean, we read all the things in the press about ransomware attacks and data breaches. And down in San Diego, there's been a number of data breaches. For example, the Scripps issue, where they got hit with ransomware, and some of the data was also exfiltrated, so taken from their systems out onto the internet as well. So cybercrime is a business. We tend to think about these criminals in the back of garages, huddled over a laptop or such like. Cybercrime back in 2018 was valued at about $1.5 trillion as the cost of big business. Today, that's valued at over $6 trillion. So you can see this is an escalating issue, and it's hugely profitable, unfortunately, for cyber criminals, which is why we all need to play our part in staying safe online. So I just wanted to give that somewhat in perspective. Slide, please. So let's shift on to the slides where we've got some real content, and we're going to try and help you out. So if you could advance the slides for me, please, and go past that one. So identity theft is a huge issue for all of us. I mean, many of us are spending our lives online and engage in giving lots of our data to different vendors and such like. In fact, it's such an issue. Around 60 million Americans have been affected by identity theft in some way. And that number is growing, unfortunately, on a year-by-year basis. Slide, please. So how do people collect information about us? Well, obviously, there's somebody stealing our wallet or our purse. We leave it on a coffee shop table and it disappears, or somebody takes it out of a bag. There's a rich amount of information in that wallet. But of course, if we look at the specific pieces and the picture of the person dumpster diving here is just to make you aware that if you are throwing out personal information, if you are throwing out paperwork that's got your identity on it, actually somebody might be taking that out of your trash. So make sure that you're shredding everything that's got your identity on it, and make sure you're keeping that information away from the people that might be going through that trash. But of course, the internet is one of the biggest ways we actually give our information willingly up to other people. But of course, there's scammers out there trying to get it too. And there's, of course, data breaches, which we hear a lot about in the media on a daily basis. Slide, please. So what are they going to do with our identity? Well, unfortunately, one of the biggest things, and on that Federal Trade Commission slide a little bit earlier on that we skipped over, one of the top ways that actually our identity is abused once somebody gets hold of our social security number and other bits of information that allow them to abuse our identity is to actually go and claim benefits or pension payments or social security in some form, or even file tax filings. However, the IRS have done a good job over the last few years in actually clamping down on that and reducing that risk for us. So there's an awful lot of information going out there, and there's an awful lot of ways that identity thieves can make money. They can control our cell phone, so they can even do what's called a SIM lock, get hold of our cell phone, and that cell phone gives them access to all sorts of things, and we're going to come back to that in a moment. And they can forge checks and such like. So there's lots of ways that an identity thief can actually abuse us. Slide, please. And slide again. So one of the big ways in here is phishing emails. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. We all get in our inbox every day. We get all these emails landing there that are saying that your PayPal account or your Netflix account is needing to be verified. So please log on to that account and verify your information, or there's some type of issue or whatever. And the problem is that email lands in your inbox. It's got a link. You're going to click the link. You end up on a web page, and we're going to see what that looks like in a moment. But you end up on that web page. The minute you open the email, the cyber criminal is tracking your activity with that email. So they actually know that you're opening the email. So they're validating that you are a real person with that email address, which gives them more opportunity to create campaigns going forwards. Slide, please. And this is what a phishing email, we've all seen them. PayPal is one of the most top brands used in phishing attacks such as this. And you can see in this instance, I've actually created the links here. So if you hover over the who from address, you can see that actually this email is not from PayPal at all. It's from another address. And you should look for grammatical errors in the emails. Big companies very rarely make grammatical errors, because an email like this would have been a template. It would have gone through an edit process and all sorts of things. And if you look at the parenthesis around after the information, full stop, and then opens a parenthesis and a full stop within the parenthesis, you can see there's a lot of grammatical errors in this email. So it should highlight to us that actually this is a fake email. It's nothing to do with us, and we should just delete it. So next slide, please. But where would it take you? This is like the web page it will take you. And if you look here, you can see that this web page doesn't have the secure. It says not secure in the browser. Now you should, on the real website, see the padlock. However, that's not a tried and tested means of knowing you're on the right website either. Always check the address, because some phishing sites like this that are trying to get your data will actually have that encryption. So we'll have that secure sign on there as well. So look at the address and make sure that looks real too. But basically you can see this particular site probably doesn't look too real, but they are getting clever. Next slide, please. And this is an example actually of a bank in an offshore bank in the UK called National Westminster Bank, NatWest. And it just shows how effective some of these phishing sites really are. You can see, one is very close to the other, and I challenge most of us to actually understand what the difference is between the one on the left and the one on the right. Just out of interest, if you are looking at this, the one on the right-hand side of your screen is the real one. So it's challenging for even the best of us to understand what's fake and what's real. Next slide, please. And what happens to that PayPal if you give them information? Well, this is the dark web, and as you can see, there's a list of PayPal accounts behind here. And this is a picture of a dark website selling your PayPal account, or not selling yours, selling PayPal accounts that have been abused. So once you give up that password and the identity and password, they actually then go on and auction off, sell off the access to your account for somebody else to abuse. So there is an entire business process behind this. Next slide, please. And next slide. In the interest of time, we have those disconnections. We're going to move ahead. And also, spear phishing is an issue. The more data that gets breached, the more targeted and personalized some of these emails become. Next slide, please. And this is an email to me from somebody I know. Alexandra does some great work with charities, and we've run projects before. And as you can see, this was actually somebody took control of his LinkedIn account, sent an email to all the people in his LinkedIn database, and it looks and feels very, very personal, and it looks correct. So the timing's right. There are some little things in here that it wasn't personal enough, because Alex and I know each other very well. It's not addressed correctly because he'd signed his emails Alex, not Alexander. So there are some things that are wrong in here. But my point is, even sometimes when you get emails from people you trust, you've got to look at these emails and think, is this in context of the person that's sending it? Does it feel and look like the person that actually I know and trust? And if it doesn't, then the best thing to do, send them a text message, give them a call and ask them, did you send me this email? It alerts them that they may have been abused, or their account may have been hacked, and more to the point, it'll validate the email for you as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. So unfortunately, what is it that identity thieves are looking for? Well, shred everything personal. I mean, that's the first thing we've already covered for that dumpster diving. But also, think about every interaction you have online. Is my data actually essential? Even when a legitimate company is asking you to give over that data, we don't know when they might have a data breach. So make sure that you're actually looking and keeping hold of the data that you don't think they need. If they're asking for too much data, then don't hand it over. But the identity thief is basically after every piece of information they can get from you. The more wealth of information they can take from you, the more likelihood it is that they're going to seem and feel like you when they go to abuse your identity. So protect yourself in all these different ways. Next slide, please. Now, of course, and it doesn't always take the form of online either. So while we might be giving up our information online, somebody might be sending us a link, etc., etc. Just be aware these things can also happen on phone calls as well. That phone call that turns around and says there's a tax rebate, or your car's out of warranty, or there's an issue with your laptop and we need to update the software on your laptop, or whatever it is, make sure that actually you're just hanging up those calls, because those are spam calls. I can tell you now, Microsoft do not know about a problem on your laptop before you do. And they do not proactively call people in that way. And make sure you're running a good cybersecurity antivirus protection. And make sure, importantly, it's up to date and it's active on your machine. And of course, ESET have a product here as well. But make sure you're running anybody's product to stay safe. Next slide, please. Now, one of the things we often do is go to the coffee shop, we connect to their Wi-Fi, and while we're on their Wi-Fi, then we start actually doing things. Now, make sure if you are connecting to public Wi-Fi in this way, now, firstly, the best practice is to use some sort of virtual private network. But if you haven't subscribed to one and you haven't gone down that path and you do connect to public Wi-Fi, make sure you don't transact or hand over any details. So if you are signing on to a system, potentially somebody on that public Wi-Fi could be actually looking at your traffic flowing, looking at your ID, your password, depending on what you're signing on to and whether it's secure in itself. So make sure you're holding back that information, that and making make sure you do your transactions on your home network where it's encrypted and you're in control and it's within the privacy of your own home. I mean, bear in mind, in a coffee shop, somebody might be looking over your shoulder as well. So vigilance and question everything you're doing. Next slide, please. Now, one of the big things that we can do, and this is something I encourage everybody to do, is actually to make sure you lock down your credit file. And locking down your credit file is really, really important, because what it does is it means that somebody can't take credit or abuse, and credit with a bank, credit cards or such like. Lots of different organizations do credit checks on a frequent basis. You'd be amazed at how many times your credit file is actually accessed. You can lock your file. So you can set it that maybe it's had a temporary fraud alert or such like, but you can lock it and unlock it when you need to use it or somebody needs to use it. So if you are going to the bank or you're going to take out a new loan or such like, you can actually unlock it and allow them access to it and then relock it. So make sure that you actually lock this down, and make sure your families are doing the same. One of the things that identity thieves will do, if they steal the identity of a child, they'll actually start a credit file and start this issue for a child, even though they're not of the right age. And by the time the child then gets to go to college and is looking to maybe take a loan for a car or such like, then they might actually find their credit score is already very, very bad because somebody else has abused it. So lock your kids' credit files as well. Be really proactive, your kids and your grandkids. Next slide, please. And if you do get, you are a victim of identity theft, then the FTC is a place where you, one, go and report it, but more to the point, they provide great advice on actually locking down your credit and what to do, etc., etc. One of the things I missed earlier on was one of the big protections here online is, of course, two-factor authentication and passwords. Cybersecurity guy talking about passwords and two-factor authentication. It's not unique, but it's one of the most important things we should be doing to actually lock and protect our identity. Next slide, please. And one thing, I talk about lots of bad things that happen online, etc., but the internet's a good place. Think about what life would have been like had we not had the internet during this pandemic, being able to talk to our families on a frequent basis and having those FaceTime conversations and such like. So we must never forget the internet generally is a good place and actually has transformed the way we communicate. Next slide, please. And let's try and get some questions going. Let's bring back our host there. And I apologize again for that disconnection that we had at the start. I'm not sure what was going on there.
Thank you, Tony. Definitely, you are an expert in this field, so thank you for being with us. The questions are pouring in, and we're going to get to as many of them as we can. So let me start with a question from Davis, who says, Tony, do you recommend VPNs, which are virtual private networks?
Lots of people run a VPN to get to a football game or content that may be geographically restricted. I mean, that's one use of them. But if you are using public Wi-Fi on a frequent basis, then it's actually a good idea to hide the content coming out of your machine. So basically, a VPN encrypts from your machine out into the network. So over the public piece of the network, where you're sat in that coffee shop, a library, an airport, or whatever it might be, it will encrypt it in the same way your data is encrypted on your home network. However, at the other end, it then decrypts and sends it off to the website that you're trying to get to. If all you're doing is browsing the news or such like, and you have security products on your machine, you have a firewall on your machine, you have antivirus software, and you're not transacting or putting in any personal details, then you may not need a VPN, but it's a good protection to actually have as well.
Thank you so much, Tony. We're getting to the next question. This one is coming from Bruce, and Bruce is asking, which is better for my wireless laptop? Mcafee that comes free with AT&T or Windows Defender? I shouldn't use both, right?
Well, actually, you can't use both. For Windows, the operating system itself, if you install a third-party security product like Mcafee or ESET, and I should say the best one for you actually is ESETs, but if you are using a third-party product, Windows Defender automatically switches itself off. And that's true of Windows 10 and Windows 11. Yeah, the most important thing is that you are running some form of antivirus product. And on Windows 10 or 11, if the third-party product expires after a period of time, Windows Defender will cut back in and protect you anyway. But there's something called monoculture security, and the problem is if everybody uses one product, you end up with weaker security. So it's actually good for all of us to use slightly different products. So yeah, having a third-party product that adds additional value as well. So for example, ESET's product, we have banking protection. If you go onto your bank site, it will actually open a different browser window, it'll lock down all the connections, and it'll give you banking protection, it'll provide you parental controls. It adds a lot more value than what comes with the operating system. I know Mcafee have very similar things in there. So my recommendation is actually use a third-party product.
Excellent, thank you. I had no idea that the variety is good in this case. So let me go back to another question from Bruce. He's asking, is there a way to find out if someone has opened any accounts in my name?
Absolutely. Your credit file, so contact one of those credit agencies, Experian or TransUnion, and actually ask to see your credit file. On the credit file, it will show all the accounts that have been attempted to be opened, and it will show the accounts that you actually have. So financial companies report back to those credit bureaus with information on a monthly basis. So for example, if you miss a payment, your credit score goes down. That's how the credit score is going down, because they notify those credit bureaus that actually you've had a missed payment. But if somebody's tried to access, then actually take that notification. Now, myself, I don't pay for any service with a credit bureau. I take the free service, so I'm just monitoring myself. So once a month or whatever, I log on and look to see whether anybody's doing anything. However, you can pay, and they will proactively tell you when somebody tries to access your credit file. And the reason I don't do that is because my credit file is actually locked.
So this is actually an excellent segue to a question from Julia. Julia is asking for clarification. So if I lock one credit agency, does that lock all three?
No, not necessarily. If you put a credit alert, a fraud alert on your credit file, then it does notify all three. And all three will then have that extra level of authentication should anybody actually try and access your credit file. So, but unfortunately, a freeze on one doesn't freeze on all.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Next question has to do with a browser called DuckDuckGo. The site is used as a browser, and the person is saying, I'm always getting the message, this is not secure, even when I know that that particular site is a secure one. What to do?
Well, so DuckDuck is actually a search engine. So it's something you use, for example, in the same way Bing or Google or even Yahoo or one of the other many search engines that are out there. So DuckDuckGo is a search engine rather than a browser. And what it's doing is it's looking at the data that's being sent back and forth. So, for example, it will restrict some things actually coming down into your browser. So generally, take them as warnings. DuckDuckGo is actually a good private search engine. It's all personal. It's all very, very much personal choice. What you can also do, if you know, lots of us like to use Google. If you want to use Google, go into your security settings and actually stop Google tracking you. So turn off all the geography history and the history of search, and don't allow them to collect this. It then also protects you in somewhat of a similar way.
And speaking of tracking, we have a question about email tracking. How do you enable email tracking?
I'm not too sure I understand the question. The way that cyber criminals track the emails they send you is if you look at the link, if you hover over the link, what you'll see is a string of numbers and letters after the email. And you can see this in legitimate emails as well. So if, for example, you've got from your favorite shop today an email saying they've got a sale on or whatever, if you hover over the link they've sent you to go to their website, you can actually see this long string of numbers and letters. That's a unique tracking code. And what that means is when you open that web page, they know it came from the email they sent you. So then suddenly you may see an email tomorrow that turns around and says, hey, we noticed you looked at this, or you left this in your cart. That's actually how they're doing it, is because they know the session that you went to.
All right, next question is a complex one, but I know you probably have some good advice. It's coming from Kari, and Kari is writing, did I get scammed with an antivirus on my computer? Here's what happened. My computer stopped and a big blue screen came on that said to call this number and not to turn off my computer. I had to pay $484 with my checking account. They remotely worked on my computer for 1 hour. They say they are Windows Online support, and my computer now works perfectly.
That sounds to me like it's a scam. What you're describing is what's known as the blue screen of death. However, a blue screen of death doesn't come up with a phone number that you then contact for support.
Up a little bit? So we're ready.
So I would hazard a bet that actually that may well have been a fraudulent type of scam, and we should actually make sure that you've got some good antivirus software, cybersecurity software on your device to actually see whether whoever it is that scammed you may well have left something on your device. And you might be a future customer of theirs again. So they may actually have left something on there that means they could actually replay the entire thing and do this again. So we should actually connect. Please connect with me. You got my email address was at the start of this presentation, and if not, please reach out to the Oasis team and ask for my email address, and we should get somebody to take a look at your device.
Thank you so much, Tony. Yes, you can get in touch with us and get Tony's email, and we will be packaging all of the Tech Talks, so you can go back and hear Tony repeat the information if you missed some of it today. Thank you again, Tony, for joining us.